Shortly after WorkbenchCon, I injured myself. Not a woodworking injury, didn't cut any fingers off or anything like that. I hurt my back getting out of my car, and it put me out of commission for about a week. And as I'm spending time just kind of dealing with the emotions of not being able to do the projects that I want to work on, not being able to do the things that I like to do, it got me thinking. We don't talk about that too much. So in this episode, while I still am not 100% and can't continue working on my workbench at the moment, I figured I'd take a moment and do what I can do, break down this cardboard problem I have behind myself, and let's talk about it. Who knows, maybe this turns into a little bit of a series. Maybe once I'm better, I can talk about things like different exercises to strengthen you. Maybe there's like a working out for woodworkers. That could be a fun thing. Anyways, I'm gonna start breaking down some cardboard and we'll just talk it out. So what happened to me is I was just getting out of my car. Just a normal day, hadn't lifted anything, hadn't tried to work on any projects even that day. I had just, sat in a chair and had some tea and read a book for a while. And I was planning on going to the store and buying myself some supplies for the next project that I was going to be working on. And as I'm, leaving, I have to close the gate behind myself here. I get out of my car to go close the gate. And I can't stand up. My back just immediately stops. So I shuffle my way back to my car and slowly pull myself back onto the property and go inside and lay down. And after a couple hours of Advil and stretching, I managed to kind of stand up and kind of move around. Still unable to really move my body though. The pain was pretty much instantaneous and extremely intense. I am lucky in that I have family members who do physical therapy. So I gave them a call and told them about what was going on with me. And they explained it's probably some kind of age-related degeneration. God, getting old sucks. And that I needed to take it easy, use a heating pad, maybe do a little bit more stretching, but otherwise, just take a bunch of Advil and wait. And if you know me, particularly if you're like a friend of mine and you know me in real life, sitting around and waiting is not my forte. I tend to be the type of person who's always got something going on. Be that a hobby, be that a project I'm working on. So the idea of sitting around doing nothing while I have an active project working on my workshop was excruciating. Didn't bother me quite as much as the back, but it was close. And I had a lot of time to just kind of sit and think about what life would be like if this was permanent. I wasn't under the impression that whether it was nerve or a muscle spasm or whatever, I wasn't under the impression that it was going to be permanent. I had faith that my body would heal itself. But it still got me thinking of what does it look like if I was unable to do what I love to do. And frankly, that's an uncomfortable feeling. The reality of not even be able to cook for myself because I couldn't stand up straight for long enough to cook anything. Probably would have had a hard time lifting even a small saucepan of water because it was so painful. the helpless feeling sucks. So I just had to kind of sit with that. I'm sure my therapist and I will talk about this later this month. So yeah, I had to sit with the feeling of just not doing anything. And it would have been easy to kind of despair. That kind of feeling of like, woe is me. Why'd this happen to me? How much life sucks sometimes. And yeah, I think we've all been there. But it got me thinking, this is a bit of a mindset thing. When you are working on a project, maybe you're putting on a layer of finish, maybe a polyurethane or a varnish in particular, it takes time. You have to put it on, you have to wait for it to dry. You have to do the next layer and the next layer, and I know this is similar to things like epoxy and fiberglass and other things as well. But it takes time. And so what I tried to do is reframe my focus from I can't do my project to my project is now me. I need to get better. I need to help my back heal, whatever that may mean. And in the future, it will mean what can I do to exercise to prevent this from happening again. I have a saw stop because I don't want to lose my fingers. Whether it's my day job or my woodworking, my fingers are very important to me. Similarly, with my back, if I'm unable to lift or pick things up, I can't exactly do a whole lot of woodworking very well. At least not the kind that I like to do. Things like furniture or larger kind of construction projects. And so yeah, I tried to reframe this downtime as focusing on what I needed to do as a project for bettering myself for the future. So that's what I did. Each time I had to sit down and do some stretches. Each time I had to remind myself not to push it, not to try to lift something. I had to keep reminding myself that I was focusing on helping me do better in the future. Just like waiting for a varnish to dry. Now, luckily my day job does not require me to do any heavy lifting, really. So I was able to still mostly work. It was a little sore sitting up sometimes, so there was a lot of taking a break to lay on a heating pad. But again, trying to reframe it as I need to work on this so that I can do things that I want to do in the future. One thing I will say that really rather sucked is I had just come back from WorkbenchCon. I was only like a few days out from it. And there was that excitement, that drive to jump into doing the next thing. And so to kind of hit that brick wall, it sucked. But again, I tried to use my time while I was bed and or chair bound to better myself. Now, one thing getting injured like this will teach you in a hurry is how important it is to have community, family, friends, found family that can help you out when you need a hand. I guess in a way, that's another part of woodworking. What we do as woodworkers is very often kind of a singular or solitary pursuit. Most often, at least In my experience, and I imagine probably in yours as well, a lot of times you plan something out, you go do it, and then you have something to show for it. And between the planning and then the showing, it's just you. Maybe you get a hand for lifting or moving or finishing a large piece, but for a lot of times, in a lot of ways, it is solitary. But there are certain things in life that you cannot just do alone. And sometimes getting better is one of those. Now, I'm lucky in this economy, this world we live in. I know people that can help me, that it's not going to cost me a ton of money to tap into expertise around physical therapy. I'm also lucky in that my day job provides insurance. I know not everyone does. Even though the projects themselves are oftentimes solitary pursuits, we as human beings need each other. And even though I am a fiercely independent and very comfortable in my solitude type of person, very much a stereotypical introvert, being able to not only have a community, but also being able to accept help from that community is an asset. And so, not saying if you are or aren't, because I don't know you. At least I probably don't know you. But if you think on it, and you feel like maybe you would have a hard time accepting help, maybe you would have a hard time finding help, maybe that's something to work on now, before you need it in the future. Also, might I suggest, if you can avoid it, not procrastinating on cardboard. I have a problem. I'm trying to think of what other things I might want to say. Maybe we can talk about WorkbenchCon. As a concept of a community, yeah, let's talk about that. So, I went to WorkbenchCon, which, with the ticket and the hotel room and the driving, because luckily I was able to drive, it was a solid $1,500 gamble on a conference I'd never been to meet people I'd never met, with no real expectations of even what I might find there. Sure, we've all seen reels and marketing that tell us what to expect, but it's still a gamble. What I found there was one of the most welcoming communities I've ever encountered. Now, as someone who's worked in tech most of his life, I've been to countless meetups, probably half a dozen conferences at this point, and while I vibe with and empathize with a lot of tech people, it isn't always the most welcoming of communities. And what I found was the exact opposite here. Folks that basically taught me how to do woodworking, how to work on and build projects from the ground up, what tools to buy. They were there. I got to meet people and talk with people that, in all senses of the word, have been my heroes. And now, a number of them I would say I get to call my friend. Acquaintance friends, we're still getting to know each other, but I didn't expect that. I expected that I would probably run into a handful of well-known folks, woodworkers I'm sure you've probably watched. I would get to thank them for the things they've taught me, for the entertainment they've provided, maybe get a selfie with them and move on. But that's not what I found. Yes, I got some selfies and I'll show some later perhaps. But really what I found was just normal people who have this hobby who happen to share it online. Yeah, there are some folks that I would say are YouTubers in the sense of their whole focus is wanting to make YouTube videos, and no problem with that. That's great. They find that fulfilling, that's awesome. But I would argue that most of the folks that I met there, they are woodworkers, they are creators, they are makers first, who just happen to do YouTube as a way to share either what they do or to maybe help other folks learn. Getting to sit down and have drinks or dinner from folks ranging from small podcasts to huge channels that rake in millions of views. And just talk, just be able to just share what you love with folks from all around the country and even the world. There were some folks from the other side of the pond, if you will. It's more than I could have ever expected. So will I be going back? Most certainly. I've already bought my ticket for 2025. One of the things that I think about things like WorkbenchCon, and I've heard similarly good things about Maker Camp, which I'm planning on attending later this year. Since we are involved mostly in a solitary pursuit like woodworking, we don't oftentimes have the community, have the people to share what we do, what we love with, that are not just on the other side of a screen. And while I absolutely love being able to share what I do and what I enjoy and being able to watch what other people do and see them share it, there's always that disconnect. There's always that reality that the best that you might have as a viewer of their content is a parasocial relationship. And as far as from the flip side, from the other side of the camera, who knows? Maybe your interactions are positive, maybe they're negative, but it is oftentimes so removed. So, I mean, unless you happen to be a huge production with half a dozen people, which I don't know that I met anyone there at the conference, even the biggest folks that were like that. At most, they probably had the person who presented and, you know, did some of the projects, and then maybe had one person behind the scenes recording and producing and editing. Two very important roles to provide a lot of the wonderful content that we enjoy. But like, that's not a huge workforce or a community. At best, they might have probably had some folks down at a finishing shop or a millwork shop, but for the most part, what we do is a very solitary thing. Things like Maker Camp, things like WorkbenchCon act as kind of the consolidation and meeting points for what makes up that community. Community that I, as small as I am, find myself in now. One thing I will say is, regardless of if you were there as somebody who is a creator or a maker, or you were there as someone who provides services or tools for creators and makers, everyone there was united in their goals to make cool things, to build amazing projects. And that is a mindset, that is a philosophy that's incredibly rare these days. And I think that's a problem. I'm not saying that the world is good in the way that that has kind of fallen into shape. But to find a concentration of people who are so interested and so focused on building things, not just software or, because again, I'm from technology, like a technology background, so like a lot of my historical precedent is technology. Not just building a new app or a new service that, you know, optimizes some form of interaction. Not just dream up an idea, but actually make it come into reality. It is rare. It is something that I wish we had more of in society. I think that's something, you know, talking about community, I think that's something that maybe we could work on as a society, as an existing maker community. I think that's something we could do to better grow. One of the keynote speakers at WorkbenchCon was Tom Baudet. I think that's how you pronounce his name. And he is famous for a number of things around radio and advertisements, but I would say one of the more impactful things that he has done recently is Hatchspace up in Brattleboro, Vermont. And so getting to listen to him talk about how building a community and a space for community, how they went about that, the positive impacts it has had on local folks there, and yeah, like that's the kind of world that I think we could build as a society, as a community. We could give people the tools, the skills, and knowledge to build whatever it is they desire. Another keynote speaker, Xyla, our opening keynote, one of the many things she talked about was when she would actually build these videos for a makerspace that she was involved in when she was in college. And how perhaps because of the size, a bureaucracy had grown up around the makerspace, and very strict rules around how one might join the makerspace and learn how to use the tools were implemented. So she saw a problem and decided to try to solve it, making tutorial videos about how machines work, how to use them, to give people confidence to give it a try. Unfortunately, her makerspace didn't care for that and didn't use it, but she found other makerspaces were using them. And I think that that is an important distinction between those two approaches. When you're faced with a problem, in this case, how to onboard people to a tool at a makerspace, do you meet people where they are? I think we could all do better at that. Helping people who maybe don't have the confidence or experience and don't know where to start to give it a try. Something I've been thinking about recently has been, how do we make a space that's safe for people to fail? And in particular, how could we make a space that is safe for kids and young people to fail? To learn that it is okay to attempt something and it not work out. But yeah, maybe we could think on that some more. Anywho, maybe that's something you can think on as well. What does your community look like? What can you do to grow your community? I know a lot of folks are lonely right now. And again, with the kind of solitary work that we do in woodworking, it's easy to feel lonely sometimes. But maybe give it a thought. What can you do to start building community where you're at? If there's no real community yet where you live, what can you do to build one? If you do have a hard time finding a community in person, which I get it, maybe see who you can find online. There's a lot of us out there. And we're all pretty friendly. As long as you're cool, can be chill, be a good hang, as Jimmy DeResta puts it. As long as you can be a good hang, I think you're welcome here. And now that I'm done with this cardboard, I think I'll wrap up here. Hopefully, next video, my back will be feeling better and I can keep working on that project over there. Until next time, be well.
Out of all the other videos you could have watched, thanks for spending your time with me. Until next time, be well.